and welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. Years ago, I began recording the bedtime stories I told my children every night. Now, I'd like to share those stories with you. I hope you enjoy my Stories for Wonderful Children. Once upon a time, there was a little princess. She was a sky princess, and she lived upon a cloud. It was a mostly white cloud with some very nice little blue areas of it. It was just the right size for her. It gave her enough room for her nice fluffy bed made out of clouds. It gave her enough room for her cloud boat that she would get on when she wanted to ride to a different cloud, like her parents' cloud. It had a spot for her to keep all her clothes, and it had a spot for her to keep all her toys. Her favorite toys were her wands. She liked to use her sky wands in order to make the clouds around do things. She would point her snow wand at a cloud and say the magic words, icy kadicey, and the cloud would begin to drop snow from the bottom of it. Or she would get her rain wand, and she would point it at a cloud, and she would say, drippy kabippy, and the cloud would begin to drop rain on the earth below. The Sky Princess liked to sort of hang with her head over the side of her cloud, looking down at the ground below, and depending on what she thought it looked like they needed, she would use her wands. When they were passing over farms that looked dry and the plants looked thirsty, she would point at all the clouds she could find around her, saying drippy kabippy, drippy kabippy, drippy kabippy, drippy kabippy, until rain was just pouring from the sky down over the crops, making them grow. When she passed over hills that had children on them that looked like they wanted to sled, she would make it snow so that the hills would be covered with white and slick and icy, so that the children could play on them and build snowmen and throw snowballs and slide down on their sleds. One day she decided that it had been a little while since she had seen her parents, and so she boarded her cloud boat and she rode through the sky to the great giant palace of a cloud where her parents, the king and the queen of the sky, lived. She went into the palace, and she could see that her mother and father were busy working on an extremely large rainbow that they were going to put into the sky a few days later after a particularly large storm. She said, "Hi, Mommy. Hi, Daddy. What are you doing?" And they told her all about this rainbow and about the storm. She said, "Oh, can I help make the storm? I do so love to make the rain. Am I old enough to help make the thunder and lightning yet?" And her mommy and her daddy looked at each other and they said, "Well, maybe you can give it a try this time." And she said, "Yes." And so when the day came for the big storm, the clouds were passing over an area that had not had much rain in quite some time. It really needed rain. So first, they were all out there, her mother and her father, and even her little brother, and they were all pointing their wands at clouds to get the rain started, saying drippy kabippy so many times that her voice started to feel a little raw. And then it was time for the storm to really get going. Her mother brought out the bottles that had the lightning in them, and her father brought out the big drums that they used for the thunder. Well, you had to be very careful when you handled lightning. You could get hurt if you weren't careful. So the Sky Princess put on the special gloves that you had to wear when you were handling lightning, and then she carefully set the first lightning tube on the edge of a cloud, and then she pressed the button on the bottle that would open it up, and she backed up very quickly and said 3, 2, 1, and the bottle opened, and and the lightning went and shot down to the ground. And immediately she took up the big stick that you banged the thunder drum with, and she banged it as hard as she could, and it made a sound. She smiled. It was the first time she'd gotten to make lightning and thunder. Looking down, she could see that there had been a problem. The lightning, when it had struck the ground, had hit a tree, and that tree was so dry that it had caught on fire. "Oh no," she said, "this is going to be a problem." She said, "We've got to get that rain down there fast." So she looked around for a cloud that could rain right on the tree. The first one that she looked at was really too low and too far east. So she looked around some more and she saw one. It was kind of high above her, but it would go right over the tree. She had to aim her wand very carefully, but when she was sure she had it in just the right place, she pointed at it and said, "Drippy-ka-bippy," and the cloud darkened and rain began to pour out. The Sky Princess watched with satisfaction as the rain poured down over the tree, and she watched the flames of the fire flicker out under the downpour of the rain. And then it was time for the storm to be over. She had to help her mommy and her daddy with the rainbow. They had folded it up carefully in an enormous box that had a spring on the bottom of it. And when it was time to let the rainbow loose, they had to have one person take the lid off the box while two other people pulled the lever that let the spring shoot the rainbow up into the sky. Well, her mommy and daddy got to pull the lever, but she got to be the one to take the lid off the box. She slid the lid off the top of the box and peeked down inside. She could see the rainbow folded up inside, all of the colors folded over one another. She thought that it was probably the most beautiful thing she had ever seen in her life, and she so looked forward to the day when she would be old enough to sew rainbows of her own. Then she took 3 steps back, and her mother and father pressed the levers. The giant springs shot the box up into the air, and the rainbow kept going. It unfolded in a beautiful arch across the sky, from their cloud down to the ground. And they all stood and they watched as it caught the colors of the sun and flared in such a beautiful red and orange and yellow and green, blue, indigo, and violet. They all agreed that this might just have been the best storm they had ever made. And that's the
Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created, told, and edited today's story. Questions and witty commentary were supplied by my children. The music was composed by Brandon Thompson. If you enjoy the show, please tell someone about it, or leave a review on your podcast provider. Our email is storiesforwonderfulchildren@gmail.com. You can also contact us on Facebook or Twitter. I'll see you next time.